What's going on, guys? I'm a regular guy at the Regular Guy Firearms channel. Thanks for watching. Alright, so, for those of you who are on the Facebook page and all this other stuff, and have watched a few other of my recent videos, you knew that this review is actually coming. The Galil ACE. Now, a lot of guys were really excited about this rifle, myself included, because I'm an AK guy, and from images and whatnot that I saw, which weren't many, this seemed like an alpha AK out of the box for around $1,800, something like that, right? Well, is it? Really? Well, I'm going to go over basically the pros and cons that I found with this rifle, and I'm going to try to keep this brief because there's a pretty long list of stuff. And we're going to go over the pros first. First and foremost, you have a cold hammer forged barrel out of the box. That's great for longevity of the barrel and stuff like that. You can put a lot of rounds through this thing before it wears out. Additionally, it is a milled receiver. Now, it's not that I have a problem with stamped receivers, it's just that milled receivers tend to be a little bit stronger under firing sequences and stuff like that, particularly when the guns get hot. Milled receivers tend to flex a little bit less, and it lends itself to slightly greater accuracy as far as the rifle is concerned, because if your receiver isn't or is doing less flexing, then there's less inconsistency imparted onto the barrel, and then it affects the harmonics positively, blah blah blah. Okay. Another big thing that I really like about this rifle is this charging handle. Okay, it's huge and it's easy to hook your fingers on, but it's nice and rounded so that you're not hooking it on gear and stuff. That's a really positive thing, especially for a rifle that uses a reciprocating charging handle and does not lock itself to the rear unless you're using a bolt hold open follower on the AK mag. Oh, and by the way, this is a 7.62 by 39 rifle, for those of you who haven't figured that out already. Okay. Action smoothness is another big pro. It's one of the smoother actions that I've felt on a rifle that chambers this type of round. So that's pretty nice, and when you're actually firing the thing, you feel the action smoothness in the impulse, which basically, in all honesty, it feels like it helps with controlling the gun and being able to put follow-up shots on target a little bit faster, simply because the action's just clean to start. Okay. It also takes an AK trigger, which is fantastic for guys that want to put their AKT or whatever in the guns, and they work just fine. The stock trigger itself is not the worst thing in the world, but it also certainly isn't the best. It is a little spongy, so if you want to go ahead and replace it, you actually can, because it isn't a proprietary trigger, which is fantastic. The capability of the rail sections is another one. Now, AK guys will either be really receptive to this or kind of scoff at this, because everything aftermarket needs a little bit of fitting to work right or fit right on an AK. For instance, if you're throwing an Ultimac on an AK and stuff like that, chances are you're going to have to do some filing on the heat shield of your handguard and stuff. So, with all of these sections in place already, it already has the capability to mount whatever glass or lights or, if you want, foregrips and stuff to the thing straight out of the box, which is fantastic. Speaking of heat shields, the heat shields themselves, quite honestly, like the original Galil, are very effective. They keep the gun from overheating, getting hot early. And there are a lot of AKs out there, or AK furniture sets, that get hot very quickly. It's just a characteristic of the rifle itself. So it's actually kind of neat that the handguards themselves stay cool a little bit longer than most AK furniture setups will, which is pretty nice. And the reason why I keep making the comparison to the AK is that a lot of dudes that are interested in getting one of these because they're AK guys, and they find the fact that it's compatible with AK mags and AK triggers and the ammunition type and all that is very appetizing to a lot of guys. So there you go. Now, here's the thing. You can either think of this as a pro or a con depending on how you look at it. The very best that I was able to get out of this rifle was about 1.7 MOA, or about 1.7 inches at 100 yards. Between that and 2 inches at 100 yards. Now, is that good enough for a $1,800 rifle? For me personally, I'm going to go ahead and say not really, because I have a Chinese Mac 90 that prints 1.5 inches at 100 all the time. Okay? Even after the barrel swap. So, to me, it's not that great, but it's also not bad either, because a lot of guns in its class that take the same magazines, meaning other AKs, will usually measure between something like 2 to 2.5 inches at 100. So, it's a little bit more accurate than some out there, but not as accurate as I think it could be. Now, we have the cons to go through, and this is going to take a while, and there's a lot of description for it. Now, first and foremost, up front, we're looking at our muzzle device. Okay, the muzzle device is AR-10-ish because it takes AR-10 threads. It uses a 5/8 by 24 thread, which is an AR-10 threaded. The reason why I consider this a huge con is that there are all kinds of AK muzzle devices out there, and the fact that you made the thread pitch weird, especially for guys that run AKs and AK magazines, dudes that are into the AK will have muzzle devices just kind of laying around. It happens. Okay, so the fact that they now need an adapter to put that AK muzzle device on the gun itself is kind of annoying, in all honesty, because now it's just extra things that I have to make sure that I have with the gun, and it's already $1,800. Or around that. Yes, there are people that are turning them loose for $1,600, and there are places that are turning them loose for even more, but the average is about $1,800. $1,800, by the way, to me, is a con. Okay, but we will go over why, or you'll see why as we go through the video. Now, I need to take this apart to show you guys exactly why it is that I consider the gas tube for this a con. Okay, so we have some stuff apart on this rifle. Now, when we pull this guy out, traditionally on an AK, you're looking at the gas tube, we have a little lever here that affixes it into place so that it won't move around if you pull out the bolt and carrier group. Now, after yoking this out and then getting ready to try and figure out how the gas tube moved, I tilted the rifle up and it slid out of place. This gas tube is affixed into place by a pair of little rails here. And I gotta get this to focus. Here we go. By a pair of little rails here, and you can see those pretty clearly right there, that run on the inside of the receiver itself. And the receiver has little cutouts for it that it rides in. Now, a lot of guys will look at this and be like, oh, well, that's just fine. You know, what's wrong with you? Well, the problem is that with AKs, a lot of times when they go down really hard, as rare as that is with a quality AK. And that would mean that you have to strip the top cover off and then have to stand it up and kickstart the thing, meaning stepping on the charging handle and kicking it pretty much to get whatever is stuck out with the receiver face towards the ground so that gravity helps you. With this rifle, you simply cannot do that with a real hard malfunction because it's going to slip straight out of place and cause you problems. Okay? Now, with that being said, there is another con to how this guy is built. I have absolutely no problems with the bolt and carrier group. Bolt and carrier group seems to be just fine as far as construction and stuff is concerned. But I do have a problem with this. I have a huge problem with this. This is a rubber recoil buffer. This is also a mandatory part because there's a little locking tab in here that keeps it in place and keeps you from removing it. meaning it is a required part. There's also another little rubber gasket in here to keep stuff from coming into your action. Now, I don't consider those things by themselves a con. I consider the fact that the receiver cuts themselves, that the bolt carrier group rides on, are extended just enough to where this little rubber part is required for the action to cycle reliably. Now, the reason why this is a big deal and why to me this is an enormous con is that dependency of reliability and dependable function depends on a rubber part, and rubber gets eaten by petroleum products. Never mind the fact that it's also being beaten to death by one of the most violent actions ever devised. Here's another issue. Another big issue that I have with this particular rifle is the location of this individual tab to release your magazine. AK aficionados or dudes that are experienced with the AK will notice that this tab is really far to the rear. Okay, if I bring an AK up here, you can actually notice the difference between the location and the tabs. So, if we look at an AK mag catch and we look at a Galil mag catch, you'll see a significant difference as far as the distance. Now, the reason why this is a problem is that a lot of times when AK guys do their reloads, they'll take their new magazine, hit this catch to the point where it is almost right along the magazine body itself, slide along the mag catch, kick that magazine out, and it falls away. The problem with this particular rifle is that all modern AKs, or modern AK reloads, are damn near impossible because of the thing's distance from the original design, okay, and how far back it is. Because the second that you're trying to get the old magazine out and then sweep the new one, or I'm sorry, using the new magazine to sweep the old one out, by the time that magazine slips off of this tab, it locks back into place, and you cannot get this thing out. The only way that you can reload this thing effectively is to simply bring your hands up to the magazine catch itself and then strip the magazine out. Okay? Now, I count this as a con because this is an efficiency thing. This rifle is automatically slower than the AK because you have to do a reload specifically like that. And even if you did this reload type with the AK as well, it's still slower because you have to be conscious of the fact that as you're pushing on this tab, that you simultaneously remove the magazine. If you slip off of it early, then it will fall back into place and you'll miss anyway. On top of that, while I'm talking about reloads, this magazine well, for some reason, is much larger than an AK's magazine well. Now, there's two reasons why this is a problem. First and foremost, we have magazine compatibility issues. You saw this East European steel magazine go in there. Bakelights go in there. If I try a US Palm magazine, that's never going to happen. So that causes magazine compatibility issues as well. The next thing that's an issue, okay, is that for guys that are on the AK going to this gun, much like guys that are new to the M14, because of the size of the magazine well, and because you can think that you're in place properly for the rock-in, you can very easily miss. And I'm going to show you clips of that real quick for me and someone else.
Cooler than I thought it would. Alright, when you're ready.
Yep. Oh my god, I even slowed down. So good. Keep moving. So we saw what that can turn into, but we're not done yet still. This entire plastic thing right here that's pinned onto the receiver is one individual mold. This is a problem as far as just being able to use AK pistol grips and stuff like that, simply because you can't change it out. If you want the original AK pistol grip that comes with original wood furniture, you can't use it because you can't remove this. If you want to use a US Palm or anything else, same story. So you're stuck with what you have. Fortunately, though, this is a fairly comfortable pistol grip. Otherwise, I would be ranting quite a bit more about it. Something that I absolutely do not like at all, though, is this stock. A lot of you may have seen pictures on the internet and you thought, wow, the stock on this thing is ugly and it looks real thin. I can just change it out for an AR stock, right? Absolutely not. This is a proprietary stock tube. Now, I don't even understand how this made sense to IWI, because Israel is still holding on to a bojillion freaking M4s and M16s. Mainly the M4s. And there's still going to be a lot of dudes that run aftermarket stocks. So if you're producing a rifle in your country that may possibly serve within your military, why would you make a proprietary stock and tube? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And if you're selling it to us, it makes even less sense. Now, the stock hinge itself. This guy is an absolute pain to get undone. I mean, seriously, it takes a lot, and I'm coming off camera to put even more pressure on it now, but it takes a lot of effort to get pushed all the way down so that you can fold the stock up. I'm not even kidding. Every single person that I had try to unhinge this stock and fold it ran into problems. And they would sit there and grunt about it until they could finally get it unhinged and folded. Now, there is a pro within that, because it's really hard to unhinge the stock inadvertently. But at the same time, there are simpler methods that have been made, particularly in for instance, the ACE folding stocks, that are 1000% rock solid and secure and nowhere near as difficult to unhinge. Also, there's no manual locking method as well, so with enough force, it'll just pop out of place. For those that are actually using it to just travel to different classes and stuff, and you just want it to be folded up to be more compact, this is a non-issue. For a rifle that was developed to serve within a military capacity, there isn't an airborne unit on the globe that's going to touch it for that reason. Because if you try and fold up that stock, the instant you hit the ground after a jump, it's going to come unfolded. That's a problem. Okay? Moving forward from that, it comes with a set of little heat shields or hand guards or whatever you want to call them. Utterly flimsy and constantly move around the rifle. So I just decided to ditch them and go with a set of rubber ladders. Not that big of a deal, but it's still something I noticed. Lastly, this changing or zeroing your iron sights on this thing is a little odd, but to a point, because this front sight post is adjusted the same way that you would an M4 or an M16. Press on the plunger and turn it. There's also two sections to it because there's tritium vials on one side. There's a tritium vial on one side of this front sight post. And there's actually two different sections that you can turn, so that after you're done making your corrections, you can turn it until the tritium is facing you. That's not what I have a problem with, though. What I have a problem with, though, is this rear sight. The rear sight requires a proprietary tool or a set of needle nose pliers to adjust. The proprietary tool itself is very flimsy because I can bow it with my hand. But if you end up breaking that or something, all you really need is a set of needle nose pliers that are small enough to get into the little divots for it, and then you can turn it. I tried to turn this with one section of the needle nose pliers or like a knife or the tip of a bullet or something, and that is far more difficult to do. So here's the thing. I just sat here and talked all about this rifle. And people are going to ask me, well, what do you think then? Here's the deal. The Galil was developed to be an improvement over the AK. The Galil ACE was developed to be an improvement over that. Okay? Both were supposed to innovate creative solutions to certain problems. And an innovation, that's exactly what that means. However, if you are trying to innovate for a specific set of problems, meaning optics compatibility and stuff like that, folding stocks, collapsible stocks and stuff, if you're trying to solve those problems and then create a big host of other issues, you're not innovating. You've just produced an $1,800 gimmick. That's what this rifle is to me. Okay? Those of you that are wondering what the round count is on this rifle, 1,200. Okay? Now, all of this being said, it has been accurate enough to get the job done, and it has been reliable. Now, for those of you that own this rifle, I'm not saying go and sell it. What I am saying is that if you're an AK guy and you're preparing to sell your AK, to pick this up because you're thinking that it's going to be an AK plus a lot better, I highly suggest that you not do that. And this is just my personal opinion. But that's all I got, guys. Feel free to leave your opinions for whatever you got on IWI or the ACE or anything like that in the comments section below, and feel free to ask me any other questions that you may feel the need to. Okay? But until then, remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.